Here we go.
David Robinson versus Karl Malone. Does David have a case to be better than the mailman? The Admiral better than that mailman? What do you guys think? No,
I think peak for peak. Yeah, I think he's better than him.
Peak, he has a case. Longevity.
I think peak David Robinson.
We can throw longevity out of here.
Yeah, I think peak David Robinson is better than peak number 32. But when you have to factor in the fact that one was elite for 15 plus years and the other one, wasn't. I think 32 would rank higher all time because I think he provided more value over the course of his career. But at their best, who do I think is the better player? David Robinson.
Peak for peak. Wow, that's tough, Mars.
You get one for 2 seasons.
Yeah.
I'm not saying number 32's peak is just meh. But
right. I mean, we're going up against David Robinson, of course. Yeah. It's not like we're going up against, somebody that's just okay. No. I mean, Karl Malone during his peak years, I mean, they was in the Western Conference Championship. They just couldn't get over the hump. I mean, he was 28-11 for 11 years. I think his best season, he was 31-11. That was his best season. David Robinson led the league in scoring. I think David Robinson led the league in scoring one year. That was the year he had 71. I'm sorry. He had 71 in that one game. With that being said, for what Malone brought to the Utah Jazz in terms of his ability to score, in terms of his ability to rebound, I know this might sound ridiculous, but being able to hit clutch shots in big moments, he was better than David Robinson in that aspect. He was just as good a rebounder as David Robinson. David Robinson was not an elite rebounder as far as between him and Malone. He wasn't a superior rebounder to Malone. I think Malone was a better scorer. I think David Robinson was a better athlete. I will give you that, Mars, 100%. He was a better athlete. I think he was a better rim protector, but I think Malone was better at his job than David Robinson was at his job at the 4 spot.
Sure, I think Tri-State made a good point. The Tri-State with the super chat where the gap defensively is much larger than the gap offensively, which is true. I think Malone is a little better offensively, but I think again both can score the ball. I think both led the league in scoring at some point.
Yep.
Rebounding again, like you said, they're pretty close to. I just thought David Robinson has one rebounding title. It's there, but the gap defensively is where I think it's the most noticeable. Passing wise,
number 32 is the bad passer.
Very bad passer. So we'll get a better passer. So so I guess the gap defensively just depends how much you value.
Is it though? Because Malone was an elite defender. Malone wasn't a good defender.
No, David Robinson is one of the best.
Yeah, David Robinson. Yeah, I think is super elite. Like he's closer to Hakeem than Karl is close.
Chill. David Robinson had a season where he averaged 4.5 blocks, which he obviously led the league in blocks that year, and then he also averaged 2.5 steals too.
Yes, he did do that.
You know how absurd?
Yeah, averaged 2.5 steals. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
But the thing I'm thinking about with Malone, and I'm thinking about him having to go up against, because again, that was a big man era. So a lot of times he got switched on the bigger guys and dealing with guys at his position. Malone wasn't much of a rim protector, but he can block shots. But he was really good at swiping at the ball, kind of like what Joker does. Except Malone was elite at that. Got guys getting shots off. He was real good at disrupting that and giving guys one opportunity in terms of shots. Like once you got the shot off, Malone was getting the rebound and they were going with it. David Robinson, he was an elite rim protector, but in the process of him being a rim protector, you could get the ball back from him. So that's kind of when I think about the defense, I'll give you the edge defensively, but I don't think it's that wide of a gap because Malone made the all-league defensive team 4 times? 3 of those 4 times it was first team. And he was doing it in an era where the defensive bigs were awesome.
For what it's worth, the stat guys like the advanced analytics crowd and like the impact crowd rate David Robinson very highly, like higher than I rate him. If you talk to enough people, you'll find people who think David Robinson legitimately was the best player in the world for a few years. Like while Michael Jordan was in the league.
There was an argument, Moss. He had a case.
They'll point to some advanced analytics and some impact metrics, and they'll genuinely say David Robinson was better than Michael Jordan some years in the 90s. That's how highly they rate him. So, yeah, David Robinson's numbers are off the charts. But defensively, I always say I think David Robinson is one of the 5 best defenders ever. Like, post 3-point. And I think he's one of the 5 best ever. It's him, Duncan, KG,
Hakeem.
Hakeem, and then I don't know who would be in that 5th spot. But like those 4 and then someone else.
Bill Russell.
Or even all time, you put Bill Russell and then Wilt, Hakeem, Duncan. David Robinson probably, or KG, one of those two. So he's top 6, easy. I don't think number 32 is that good of a defender. I do think, especially like later on in his career, like mid 90s, late 90s, I do think he was a very, very good defender.
That's when he was making first team all defense during that time.
But I think the argument would be somewhat of, you think he's a better scorer, number 32, and you think he's so much better of a passer and playmaker that what he brings on offense would supersede David Robinson's two-way impact. Because I've always said I'm not as high on David Robinson's offense as a lot of people, but I'm also not as high on number.
Why, Mars? What's your issue with David Robinson offensively? Because I want to start the conversation with him having a money mid-range game. Like, nobody talks about the fact that he could, even though he faced up, it wasn't just in the mid post. Like what Joel Embiid does at the elbow and at the free throw line, David Robinson was doing that not only in the half court, he was doing that in transition too. So he had a money mid-range game. 100% he did.
For sure had him. Yeah, I mean, that's like, I don't know. There's no numbers for like how often he took mid-range. I'd assume it was like 40%, 50% of his offense in terms of how often he was in the mid-range. Right. But my issue with his offense has always been, how do I say it? I think his ability to make jump shots was great, but then I also think his, not inability, but I don't think he carved out very efficient opportunities for himself very often, which is why I think he struggled in the playoffs to maintain his efficiency, which in part is because the team around him expected him to isolate a lot more than he probably should have, because I don't think he was that great in isolation. So that's why I always say I think David Robinson would have benefited more from someone who is a better offensive player than him, which is why when Tim Duncan came along and he gets to be a number 2 who can hit his spot on mid-range jump shots and then can play high-low with Tim Duncan, he thrives and he looks like a very good offensive player while being one of the best defenders out. But as the number 1 guy, I just think he struggled to create great opportunities for himself consistently. Pretty much had to drive right like all the time. But that's besides the point.
Ironic because he's left-handed.
Yeah, I don't know, but every drive had to go right. So I mean, there's that. But I do want to say number 32 I think struggled with similar issues in terms of his scoring translating, and that's because I think he just wasn't great around the rim. Like in the open space, like he was fantastic, tremendous athlete, but in a crowd around the rim, I think he struggled to finish oversized. I don't think he was very explosive in traffic.
I don't know about that, Mars.
Nah, when I see it, when he that little pick and roll, there's a reason I think he stops at 15 feet quite often. Because if you send him into a crowd around the rim, he ends up finishing like, I want to say like a guard, but he doesn't finish over the top very well, in my opinion, in a crowded space. If you give him a runway, I think he's great. But if you give him a runway, I think he's great, and that's why I think he would stop short and then build the momentum. But if he's there with no momentum, I don't think his touch was very great. I think he struggled finishing oversized, like I alluded to. And I think that's why he was less efficient in the playoffs. And also he took his fair share of jump shots too. He was very good in the mid-range. So I'll give him that. But I just think both of them were flawed, which is why I think they're like a level below some of the better players like Duncan, Hakeem, etc.